Hi everyone, my name is Erica Matsui, and today I'll be talking about my findings for the most effective resource in improving the youth awareness of the declining endemic hornbirds. Thank you to Papa K. Jack for supporting me with this K Fellowship. 110 of the 152 Hawaiian endemic birds went extinct, and only 42 are still living. Majority of the extinctions were caused by the Polynesians' way of life encountering the native birds. Next came the flow of Europeans, who brought invasive species. One was culex, or mosquitoes, which carries avian malaria. Avian malaria is very deadly to the native bird population. And other invasive species like mongoose and paroquets kill off the bird population. Non-native birds were also introduced, causing a threat by acting as a competition for their food supply. Because culex and avian malaria are common at high temperatures, climate change only increases the reservoir for it to spread to the Hawaiian birds. This forces the native Hawaiian birds to live in higher elevation with limited habitats and food. The image on the right shows a habitat loss over time on Maui, which is a significant loss of habitats for any Hawaiian birds. Currently, local organizations and projects are working to conserve research and spread awareness to save the Hawaiian bird populations. Some research have already been done about diseases and mosquitoes that harm the bird population. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, for example, uses 4.1% of their funds to conserve Hawaiian native birds. However, this is 15 times less funding than other birds on their list of endangered birds. But besides funding, organizations like the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, the local Hawaii Department of Land and Natural Resources, and the Maui and Kauai Forest Bird Recovery projects are working on plans to control predator invasive species or animals that harm the native Hawaiian birds. Some also have programs to harvest and breed their eggs if their natural habitats are unsafe. They use their websites as a platform to share sources like matching games and coloring books that's suitable for kids. Before I started this research, I had little to no knowledge of the endangered Hawaiian birds. This made me curious to realize that not enough of the local young students like me are aware of the endangered Hawaiian birds. Seeing that resources provided by the state does not impact the students as much as it should, I wanted to find an alternative to spreading awareness of Hawaiian birds. So my research question was, what type of resources can best improve the public's awareness for endemic Hawaiian birds? After doing some literature reviews, I found that students are generally more likely to find interest in the environment, later resulting in action, if they're exposed to positive environmental news or they spend more time out in the natural outdoors. Even though online resources are clearly not the same as doing hands-on on activities outdoors, I knew that in the modern age, the internet is one of the most essential aspects of our lives, especially during this coronavirus pandemic. But seeing that local organizations already have online websites out, they're not really having much effect on the youth, and I wanted to create something that's just as accessible as websites while still having a similar effect of the environment's impact on the youth. And this led me to come up with an interactive media that might interest the youth. Therefore, my hypothesis was that if students are given either a website or interactive media, the exposure of Hawaiian birds and its environment through interactive media would be less effective in spreading awareness as young students spend less time outdoors. Specifically, students nowadays rely on the internet to learn and spend less time in native forests and wetlands where most of the native Hawaiian birds inhabit. To sum up my research project, I've organized it in 3 steps, including the contacting local organizations, creating a 360-degree interactive media using ThingLink, and testing the interactive media using surveys. The first step was to reach out to local organizations, including the Hawaii Audubon Society, the Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Project, and the Livable Hawaii Kaihui. By doing this, I was able to collaborate in collecting photos and videos to incorporate in my interactive media. After finishing the interactive interactive media, I've shared it with those three organizations for them to be able to reach out to others using their own platform. The second step was to collect or to use the collected photos, videos, and audio recordings and information of Hawaiian birds to form the interactive media. I used an online program called ThingLink to create a 360-degree photo tour of three habitats, which included the Hawaiian birds, both common and endemic. The three habitats were the urban area, and the wetlands, and the native forests. I'll first take you to the wetlands. Thank you to Marty LaPrade from Livable Hawaii Kahui. I was able to go to the Keawawa wetlands in Hawaii Kai to create a 360-degree for the wetland birds. With ThingLink, you can move in a 360-degree motion to view what each Hawaiian bird habitat may look like. There are bird sounds in the background, which you probably can't hear right now, specific to each habitat to help viewers feel as if they are there themselves. Viewers will then click on the home button to read an overview of how the ThingLink will work. The viewers will then look around to click on various bird icons to learn about specific types of birds. And in this case, this one is an alaula, which is one of the thriving wetland birds in Keawawa. If you go to the star, you'll see a mini quiz where viewers can see a video and guess what the name of the bird is, and then click on the right arrow to see if they're correct. So again, this is the interactive media for the wetlands. The next one is the urban areas, which has similar features as the wetland habitats, but instead this one has species specific to the urban area of Hawaii. And the third one was the native forests. I want to thank members of the Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Project for using the 360-degree camera that we shipped and for going out to one of the Kauai native forests to take the picture. This is a 360-degree of the native forests, and it includes the same features as the other two interactive medias, but with Kauai forest birds. So here's one Kauai forest bird. And then the third and final step was testing out the effectiveness of the creative interactive media. I used Google Forms and I created 3 separate surveys for 3 different groups of students, but each survey had the same round of questions. The environmental groups took Survey A, which included the interactive media, and another experimental group took Survey B, which included the websites for each of the 3 habitats. The third group was the control group because they took Survey C, which included no resources. This was a way to determine if retaking the same questions in a second round of questions after viewing the sources can affect the results. I managed to get 18 peers from ages 15 to 18 so that there were 6 participants in each group. Within each survey, there were categories of knowledge-based questions and emotion-based questions. With the knowledge-based questions, participants were asked to identify threats, projects, and birds. And as you can probably see, I purposely included wrong answers in each question, but the data was collected based on the average number of threats, projects, or birds that they could correctly identify. The second category was emotion-based questions, where participants were asked to rate their appreciation for Hawaiian birds and how important they thought the issue of declining Hawaiian birds was, on a scale from 1 to 10. And I want to remind you that participants were asked to answer the same questions after looking at their respective resources to determine how much they would improve for each of the questions. And like I said, the control group taking Survey C with no resources showed whether taking the same questions had any effect on the results. The graph indicates the average improvement of correct answers for each of the survey participants. Survey A participants with the interactive media is indicated in green. Survey B participants with the websites are included in blue, and the Survey C participants with no resources are indicated in yellow. For the knowledge-based questions, it's clear that the improvement by Survey A participants with interactive media is slightly higher, or actually significantly higher, than the other two groups of survey participants. This group shows the average improvement for each of the emotion-based questions. Surprisingly, the participants who looked at the websites either had an equal or higher amount of improvement than those with the interactive media. But when looking at the results with Survey C, the control group, it's higher than the Survey A participants in the rating of importance. Because the control group should not be improving much higher with no resources, this shows that the data collected may be inaccurate from possible cheating, which can't be controlled. And the results do not reflect what the average response may be for young students across Hawaii, especially if I only had 6 participants for each of the surveys in this study. Seeing that participants with interactive media improved higher than others in the knowledge-based questions, this shows that the interactive media can effectively spread information about Hawaiian birds to other kids around my age. In contrast, seeing that participants with the websites improved just as equal or more than the interactive media in the emotion-based questions, this suggests that the websites are effective in improving youth like me through an emotional connection, or is more effective in making kids more interested in the issue. As I introduced earlier, the websites may have been more intriguing for more students because it includes positive environmental news, as in conservation plans, to cause a more impactful response. But overall, it's clear that the interactive media was effective in improving the awareness among students my age about the endangered Hawaiian birds, as seen in how survey participants with the interactive media improved higher for most of the questions compared to the other participants. Not only did the data prove this, but I received positive written responses from some participants who clearly shared their appreciation for the native Hawaiian birds after looking at the interactive media. They said things like, "We'll definitely be keeping an eye out for birds from now on," or "I want to learn more about native birds after this." If you're wondering how you can help, here are some suggestions. You can find more information on this Google Drive folder I created and where I collected information. You can also visit local bird sanctuaries like the Campbell National Wildlife Refuge or the Freeman Seabird Preserve to learn more. You can also donate to local conservation organizations like the Hawaii Audubon Society or the Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Project. And you can also protect native Hawaiian birds from invasive species by making sure that cats don't run loose, or by cleaning out old collected water that's outside, which would prevent the mosquito population from growing. And of course, be sure to share with your friends and family about what you learned. Reflecting on my research project, I learned to take risks. The creation of the interactive medias required me to reach out to different people and helped me to develop communication skills. And with that, I would say to future fellows to not be afraid to challenge yourself. Try something you haven't done before and you'd be surprised at how much you accomplish. I would also tell them to be patient. At the start of the planning of my fellowship, all I was worried about was moving on to the next step of the research process, but I think I rushed my process. Therefore, it's good to plan, but don't rush. And thank you to Dr. Chan, Jack K., Rich Downs with the Audubon Society, Callie Crampton, Justin Hyde and others with the Kauai Forest Bird Recovery Project, and Marty Laprade with the Livable Hawaii Kaihui. I also want to thank the 18 students who participated in my survey. And thank you to all of you for listening to my talk. Are there any questions?